He appreciated those things.
Dave Ridley here from NHFree.com, reporting from Jaffrey, New Hampshire. This is the Live Free or Die Festival. There are a lot of folks here who are against government intervention in their lives, including the drug war. Right now we're listening to a speech by Matt Simon from NHCommonsense.org, one of New Hampshire's really effective organizations pushing for decriminalization of marijuana in New Hampshire. Let's hear what he has to say.
Marijuana users from the federal government. States will no longer be guided by.
He's quoting a politician right now.
As I helped to get medical marijuana laws passed in Nevada, I will use the bully pulpit of the presidency to encourage the states which have not already done so to eliminate their prohibition of this common and useful plant. And the final statement is one that I think definitely merits applause. No war is more vicious than a war declared by a government upon its own people. No politician who pledges to continue such a war or who acquiesces in prolonging it deserves your support. That's what. That was activist Aaron Russo, who was not destined to become President of the United States, of course. But I would like to take 5 seconds of silence for Aaron Russo now. Thank you. Those sentiments and others like it are why we decided at New Hampshire Common Sense to start a campaign called Send the Right Message. Send the Right Message is a campaign to get the presidential candidates discussing the failed war on drugs, discussing policy alternatives that make more sense than blanket prohibition, than the all-out war on drugs we've had since 1970 in this country. That includes everything from marijuana policy to asking questions like, do you see any similarity between alcohol prohibition and marijuana prohibition? It's going to be about health care. Those are important issues, but there are other important issues that need to be discussed. The failed war on drugs is one of them. It's responsible for over half the crime, I think, that we see in this country. The murder rate went down after alcohol prohibition, was down for years, and then Nixon launched an all-out war on drugs. We have violence in our streets. We're making all the wrong people rich. It's a failed policy, and it needs to be reassessed. There are two candidates that I've spoken to who would have views similar to Aaron Russo's, or at least on the same level, perhaps. One of them is former Alaska Senator Mike Gravel. Are there any Mike Gravel supporters here today? Okay. The other is Texas Congressman Ron Paul. Are there any Ron Paul supporters? Well, I'll let the applause speak for itself on that one because my organization does not endorse candidates, but it sounds like there is at least one anti-prohibitionist candidate who has some support in this state. That is our Send the Right Message campaign. I will move on and do what I said I was going to do in this speech, which is introduce our petition for our next initiative in the state of New Hampshire. We plan to file a bill. It'll be a very incremental reform. I know there are a lot of radicals in the crowd who don't like incremental reforms. This is an incremental reform that will put New Hampshire on the same level as Maine and several other states. We're calling it decriminalizing, but really we're talking about ending criminal penalties for possession of marijuana in small quantities. We haven't decided exactly what that quantity is yet. By removing a criminal penalty, that doesn't mean penalties are gone. There will still be a penalty. It will be a fine, a civil violation. There is a big difference. You don't have to face a judge. You don't get a criminal record. These are big deals because, like my friends at the organization Law Enforcement Against Prohibition say, what is it they say? You can get over an addiction, but you can't get over a conviction. A conviction will follow you for the rest of your life, and that's why I think this initiative, this bill, will be very important to pass. We just started the petition. This is the launch of that petition if you care about reducing penalties for marijuana possession, because we can't really do much more than that, folks, until we elect an anti-prohibitionist president. The federal drug laws are not something that our state is able to get around. We'll be invaded by DEA agents, but this is something that we can do. We can reduce the penalties. We can streamline our judicial system. We can unclog our prisons a little bit.
Now, Matt has just ended his speech, and I thought he was heading back to his table, but eventually I guess he'll head back to his table.
For sensible drug policy, which is based out of Washington, D.C. We are the student
this is
on drugs.
You know, I guess Matt was the second of at least 3 speakers that have been up here talking about ending the war on drugs.
You guys about
He's got a table here for NH Common Sense, and folks are coming up and
basically touched on medical marijuana.
taking a look, signing petitions.
Talk about
Here's Matt in an article in the local paper, the Nashville Telegraph.
Legalizing medical marijuana and how it's going to, in the Senate.
These are some of the matchbooks that NH Common Sense puts out to help promote its agenda of decriminalization.
They don't provide.
And they're also getting some donations, it looks like.
What they do is protect patients from arrest, for possession.
I've dragged Matt away from his table where it's a little bit quieter, and I'm going to ask a couple questions. Matt, tell me a little bit, what's the, in a sentence or two, what's the goal of NH Common Sense?
Very simply, we're trying to end marijuana prohibition in the state of New Hampshire. We're trying to do it with responsible citizen activism, people standing up and saying that the war on marijuana does not work.
Now Matt, what do you think is the chances that we will have decriminalization of marijuana in New Hampshire in the next 2 years?
Well, we're filing a bill this December that will be considered by the legislature in the next session, and it will, we call it decriminalization. Really, we're talking about ending criminal penalties for possession of marijuana in small quantities, perhaps an ounce or so or less, and that wouldn't make it completely legal. It would make it simply a fine as opposed to a misdemeanor offense, and it would streamline the court system and hopefully unclog our prisons a little bit, waste a few less taxpayer dollars. It's hard to go much further than that as long as there's a federal war on drugs interfering with New Hampshire's ability to set its own marijuana policies.
All right, thanks Matt. And this is Matt from nhcommonsense.org. And Matt, how can people help if they want to assist your organization?
Come to our websites. We have 2 of them, nhcommonsense.org and also sendtherightmessage.com, which is our campaign to get the presidential candidates talking about drug and marijuana policy. There's contact info on that site. We need all the help we can get.
Well, I look at this crowd and I think you may be getting a little bit of help. This is Dave Ridley from nhfree.com signing off from Jaffrey, New Hampshire.